Thank you for tuning in to MacroView Television. Welcome to another edition of the Taiwan Outlook. I'm your host, Ray Guo. As some of you may know, that Taiwan has many sister state relationships around the world, with most of them in the United States. And on today's program, we're delighted to have a very good friend of mine who is also the former director of the Office of Trade and Information Center for the state of Oregon, Mr. Jim Boyle, to be our special guest on today's program. Jim, welcome to the program.
Thank you very much, Raymond.
Yeah,
it's a pleasure to be here.
Yeah, well, it's an honor to have you here, Jim. Maybe we can start off first by asking you, Jim, can you tell us a little bit about yourself? When did you first come to Taiwan? And how did you find the place when you first arrived?
Okay. I first came to Taiwan in 1968.
Okay.
Quite some time ago.
Okay, then you were just a baby.
I was about 10, actually. I'm a little older than I look. But my father took leave from Westinghouse to open up a plant for a local entrepreneur who had bought some technology.
Oh, from Westinghouse. Good.
So he came over to set up the plant. His original contract was 2 years. Okay. He extended for 2 years. Okay. My mother and father lived here for 22 years before they retired and went back to the States. Okay.
So you basically finished your elementary school in Taiwan.
And high school.
Yes. And then they went back to the States for college.
I have 3 brothers. We all graduated from Taipei American School. Terrific. And went back to universities in the United States. Yes. Okay. And what were some of the more difficult things that you needed to overcome, even though that means you came in when you were about 10 years old? I think for any child, cultural adaptation was a lot easier than for adults on average. And but I suppose it would still be a transition for you because you left some friends behind back home, and you need to make new friends here in Taiwan. Was that difficult? It was difficult from time to time. The biggest challenge was language. Okay.
Mandarin was very difficult.
Mandarin is very difficult, even for a 10-year-old. Walking through the streets of Taiwan, though, was fascinating because it was so different from the small town that I was raised in upstate New York. Okay. And it was fascinating. I always remember the temple down the street having its bye-byes. Yes. And the operas and the puppet shows out in the field, live, and all of the neighborhood comes together to watch them. I always found that very, very fascinating. So in one regard, I always felt very comfortable in Taiwan. But when I was a little child, the language was the most frustrating thing. Okay. But
back in 1968, which is about 42 years ago, that Taiwan was a very different place. At the time, maybe we're not as green as we are today, and maybe the streets are not well paved as they are today, and the transportation network is not there yet, and certainly there was no metro. And how did you find the adjustment, in that aspect, in those aspects? What was it difficult in terms of, in addition to language?
Not particularly. We
didn't have McDonald's. How about the food?
Oh, it took ages for that. the food was a little bit of a challenge at first. Okay. But
you learned to like it?
Oh yeah, absolutely, absolutely. Yeah. But the transportation was an issue that was challenging from time to time. I remember a taxi started at 4 NT and clicked by 2 NT.
That's right.
So it was very affordable. Yeah.
And also at the time, convenient. The exchange rate with the American dollars was over 40 to 1.
Yes, that's right.
So it was very inexpensive.
Yes. But my father worked in Hsinchu, and he had to take the train or a car, and the car before the highway. It was 3-4 hour drive over the.
It was really a journey.
It was a journey. It was very, very risky at times as well. But, so it was quite. You could say Taiwan at the time in 1968 was a borderline third world country entering developing economy. So it was quite unlike it is today. Yeah,
that was just at the stage when Taiwan was about ready to take off.
That's right.
With the export-oriented economy. But the fact of the matter remains is that in addition to language, to transportation, to food, all these different transitions that you had to make as a 10-year-old. Did there ever come at the time that you turn around to your parents and say, "Mom and Dad, I want to go home. I don't want to be here anymore"?
Never.
No. Because?
I don't know. I suppose it was just too much fun.
Yes.
Before we came over, I'll never forget this. One day my dad came home from work and he said, "We have a chance to go to Taiwan." Okay. And we didn't know where it was.
Yeah, you probably thought it was Thailand.
But it was. But at that time, just that month, National Geographic had an article on Taiwan. Okay. Oh, so we looked. We read the article. Yeah. We looked at the pictures of the temples. Okay. The water buffalo. the family on the motorcycle, all of those images that you have of the old Taiwan. And we looked at that, and my dad said, "Who wants to go?" And all 4 boys said, "Let's go."
Yeah, let's go. Yes.
It was a big adventure. So it was a challenging transition, but it was an adventure. So it was not.
It was an eye-opening experience, I suppose. Yes. And also, you mentioned that Mandarin is a very difficult language for anybody, including a 10-year-old.
That's right. Yes.
But your Mandarin is very good. It's beautiful now. I mean, 非常好. And how did you pick up the language? Did you go to language training centers, or did you learn that on your own? Or?
All of the above.
Okay.
I was looking at something the other day and noticed that the U.S. government, the Foreign Service, calls Mandarin one of the 5 hardest languages to learn for a native English speaker. And I think that's a fairly accurate description.
Yes.
When I started to learn Chinese, it was when I first came over, when I was around 10. But you pick up a few words.
With friends.
Yes, you can't use too much. When I started to learn more was when, at about age 14, 15, my friends and I would frequently go on surf safaris around Taiwan.
Okay.
We would go down to Kending every chance we had, for example, back when Kending was a sleepy little fishing village.
That's right.
And when we went to the train station to get tickets, somebody had to go get the tickets.
That's right.
And they would push me up to the to the ticket window, and I'd have to figure out how to get the tickets.
Okay.
When we get to Kending, we'd have to go find a taofang, or place to stay for the night.
Exactly.
And they would push me up to go deal with the landlord.
Yes.
And so I was the one that had to start practicing. So that was how I first got started.
Okay.
But then I did study formally at university. I got to the point in graduate school where I was taking Chinese language classes, and I was the only non-native speaker in the class.
Okay.
So everybody else was either from Taiwan or Hong Kong.
Okay.
So I did put quite a few hours into it at university as well.
It certainly paid off, you know.
Well, I hope so. I hope so.
Yeah. Now, I also know that you're married to a beautiful Taiwanese lady.
Yes.
And did that also help? I mean, in terms of when you were courting her, you know, actually, your language certainly pick up.
it helped with her mother and father.
Okay, good.
But her English is so fluent that it makes my Chinese look very poor in comparison. So.
Yeah. Okay, good. And you stayed in Taiwan until graduation from high school?
Yes.
And then you went back to States for, you know, college and graduate school?
Correct.
And then you came back to Taiwan after that?
I came back to Taiwan initially just to visit my parents because I hadn't seen them in a few years.
And they were still in Taiwan working?
They were still in Taiwan.
All right.
And I came back. A friend of mine encouraged me to put a resume together.
Okay.
And the next thing I knew, I had a job offer. So.
Okay. Prior to your, you know, previous position with the state office and also now your current business, what were some of the positions that you had, professional?
Well, I've done a few different things. One of the first things I did out of university was with a freight forwarder.
Okay.
Which I found very challenging, but in hindsight, in particular, very rewarding.
Yeah, certainly help your current business.
Logistics and transportation is you can have all the planning and strategy that you want.
Yes.
You can have all the financial wisdom that you need. But if you can't figure out how to get product A from point A to point B, then you've got a challenge. So logistics is a very important background, if you will, for just about any other business out there. So that was very, very valuable. One of the most fun things that I have done in my life in terms of a job was one that I actually did in China that I would not have had if I had not been in Taiwan.
Okay.
I was in Shanghai on a business trip.
Okay.
And some friends encouraged me to go talk to some people at Nike.
Okay, good.
And Nike is from Oregon, and there was a little connection. So the next thing I knew, I had an offer to go to Beijing.
Okay.
And I went to Beijing for Nike for a couple of years.
Okay. Good.
And promoted the sales, retail, some marketing and things like that in northern China.
And things.
Well, yeah. Until that was about the time of the financial crisis.
Okay.
So things slowed down a little bit after a while. But it was fascinating to work in China.
Yeah, especially at the time, Chinese economy was taking off very rapidly. Yeah. But certainly for any multinational business, trying to make a profit in China, you need to worry about problems like counterfeits. Was that an issue for you?
It was an issue, absolutely, and not just on a purely counterfeit point of view, but there were some shoes that we call Frankenstein shoes, which parts of the shoe would be real,
Okay.
But there would be overproduction. So there would be the sole from this factory matched up with a different upper from this factory, and they were sewn together to make a shoe.
Okay.
The components might have been real, but the end product was not a real shoe.
A genuine product.
So it was very, very challenging, not just a pure counterfeit, but also these Frankenstein shoes as well.
That's where the innovation came in for China. Yes. And finally for this program, Jim, which position did you enjoy the most? Was it with the trade office, or with the Nike, or with your own business?
The Nike and the new business I'm in now, yes, but the
we'll
trade
talk
office,
about that later.
The trade office was very unique because we had the opportunity to explore so many different industries.
Of course.
And that was a wonderful, wonderful opportunity. We got to study food and agricultural products, and wood products, and high-tech, environmental protection, so many different things, and get to meet a lot of different people, not just in the private sector, but government as well, NGOs. So it was very fascinating. All the different people and industries that we could study and become familiar with was really fun.
And certainly the state of Oregon was a very important sister state to the province of Taiwan at the time. And the state office position certainly offered you the exposure to different walks of life, different sectors, industries, and the different connections that you made at the time will certainly be very helpful in your subsequent career moves. Did that really help in terms of building up the kinds of connections, the kind of exposures that you needed?
Not as much as you'd think.
Okay. All right.
But it was the practice of business development that I learned at the Oregon
state office
that really applied to what I'm doing now.
Okay, certainly.
And so it's the overall business development aspect.
It's still very complementary, hand in hand with each other. Yes. We'll talk about that a little more. When we take a short break on Taiwan Outlook, we'll be right back.